This is the new Volkswagen Golf wagon, and if like the rest of Australia you're considering buying an SUV, please watch this video because there are several very good reasons why you should be considering one of these instead. Now this is the Mark 8 Golf wagon and it starts at $33,000, which is a couple of grand more than the hatchback on which it's based, but you are getting a much larger and more practical car. In this video, we're going to take a look around the outside to see what has changed on the exterior, dive inside to see how much extra room and practicality you get with this wagon body style, and then take it for a drive. The time codes for all of those sections are in the description below, and if you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and jump into the comments to let us know what cars you'd like to see us review, because we're going to have a new in-depth review every Tuesday and Thursday. Usually we start our videos at the front of the car, but given this is the wagon body style, most of the new stuff is here at the back, so let's start there. Now in Australia, you get this car in two variants. The entry-level Golf wagon, no fancier name than that, for $33,000. But the car that we have here today is the Golf Wagon Life, which for $3,000 more adds a few extra niceties on the exterior and a bit more equipment inside, which we'll get to soon. That takes prices to $36,000 before on roads. Now this particular car is finished in a very eye-searing Pomelo yellow, which is a $900 option, and to my eye at least, I think this Mark 8 generation of the Golf wagon looks absolutely fantastic. I think previous versions of this car can sometimes look a little bit dorky, majoring on practicality, but maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing things. But this time around, Volkswagen's designers have really tapered this roofline to give it almost a shooting brake silhouette. Now, rivals for this car include things like the Skoda Octavia and the Mazda 6 wagon, but also a bunch of small to medium-sized SUVs, including things like the Skoda Karoq. And you can watch our in-depth review on the Skoda Karoq by clicking that pop-out banner up there. Now, in terms of what you get exterior-wise, LED taillights are standard on this variant. You also get these sort of fake exhaust tips, which are molded into this black plastic section down here. Don't be fooled by those because the actual exhaust tips are all the way in under there. Now this car is the Golf wagon. It is longer than the Golf hatchback by 349 millimeters. So that's about that much longer than your old school ruler. And most of that extra length is in the rear overhang. And that means you get a much larger boot. This Life version gets an automatic tailgate. It also gets the function where you can waggle your foot underneath the rear bumper to have the tailgate open automatically while you've got bags in your hands. And when you open that tailgate, you discover this car's key strength, which is its massive boot. Now, officially, Volkswagen says the space in here is 611 litres with the rear seats up. That is massive. To put that into context, it's more than you get from something like a mid-size SUV like a Toyota RAV4. It's also 230 litres more than you get from a regular Golf hatchback. So that is a very appreciable gain. The boot space is also pretty clever. You get this two-stage floor which slides down to give you more space. And lurking underneath there is a space saver tyre. That's important because you don't want to be mucking around with a can of goop. I say death to can of goops, I reckon. They're a pain in the bum. You also get a couple of key amenities like 4 tie-down hooks, a light, and a 12-volt socket over this side. You also get a parcel shelf, which is handy for covering things. And Life versions also get this cargo net, which extends up to stop things flying into the cabin if you have to brake very suddenly. Now, if you drop the 40/60 split fold rear seats like this with these handy levers, so you don't have to go around to the back doors to do that, you discover that the load bay extends to 1,642 litres. A big number like that is kind of useless without any kind of context. So with the rear seats folded, that is 405 litres more than you get from a Golf hatchback when you fold the seats. So that is a very, very big difference and this car's key strength. Now, moving around the side, we see here on the tailgate another sticker to remind us that we have a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. That's industry standard now. We'd expect nothing less from Volkswagen. The other thing you notice is that the whole side profile of the car does seem longer, and that's because it is. Not only has this rear overhang grown, but the space between the tyres, the front and rear axles, the wheelbase, that's also been extended by 66 mils for this generation. And you notice that extra length mostly in the roomier back seat, which we'll get to in a little while. You also get standard roof racks finished in chrome in this Life version. In the entry-level Golf wagon, that's actually finished in black. You also get power folding wing mirrors, and the wheel design, they're 17 inches. So that's an inch larger than the entry-level Golf wagon, which gets 16 inches. And this design is called Ventura, which is sort of a black and silver design. I think looks quite cool. Actually reminds me of the Volkswagen Arteon. Anyone else think that? I don't know. The biggest bummer for me though with this generation of Golf wagon is that Australia isn't getting the Golf wagon all-track. That was kind of jacked up a bit more, had black body cladding and all-wheel drive. I thought previously that was a really cool thing, but it didn't sell in big enough numbers to be brought in for this Mark 8 version. That's a bit of a bummer. Moving around the front, and the design is very, very similar to a regular Golf hatchback, and that's no bad thing. You do score automatic LED headlights as standard on this Life version, and you also get front parking sensors. And I do like how the sensors at the front are cleverly disguised in this lower black plastic section. I also like these streaks of body color through here, which help to break up this lower section of black plastic. Overall, I think it is a very convincing aesthetic, and I think it's the best looking Golf wagon to date. I also think it's probably going to be slipperier through the air than most SUVs, and that means it'll use less fuel as well. I'd also reckon that the cabin of this car has more room than most SUVs, so let's jump inside and have a look. Up front in the Golf wagon, you're getting the same tech-infused cabin as the rest of the Mark 8 Golf range. The first thing you notice is the sheer amount of screens in here. The whole cabin does feel very modern, very tech-infused. You get two central screens here, so we get fully configurable dials in this Life version, and you also get a larger 10.25-inch central touchscreen as well. Entry-level versions get around 8 inches for that touchscreen, but in this car it is a little bit larger. Both of these screens are configurable. The dials themselves, you can have your navigation go full width, which I really love. That is fantastic. You can have your dials, you can have your revs, you can have your speed, you can even change all of that if you like. The central screen over here, it's effectively a big smartphone. So you've got your home button over here, and all of your menus are very logically laid out, which is fantastic because sometimes these infotainment screens can be a little bit confusing. You would get used to them if you owned the car, but first blush, this system is very user-friendly. The response from the screen is also very snappy, and the graphics themselves are also top drawer. Volkswagen does a very good job of this stuff. Actually using the system though can be a little bit fiddly. The thing that has caught my attention mostly when you drive this car at night are the HVAC controls, which sit just below the central screen here, and they're touch sensitive sliders. So if you want to go make the car warmer, you sort of slide up, and if you want to go cooler, you slide it down. Same goes for the volume knob here. The slider controls. They work okay during the day, but at nighttime, this whole little section actually isn't backlit, so you can't see any of these functions. So you're kind of just stabbing around and sliding a bit blind. They do have a secondary redundancy where you can access them here inside the screen, so it's not a complete fail. It's just a little bit of something to be aware of. Rest of the cabin, from a quality point of view, all of the touch points are nice and soft. The dash has this nice soft touch dog nose material, which is repeated on the door here. You get soft points to put your elbow. All of the main controls, it's quite ergonomically sound in here. Everything falls very easily to hand. The steering wheel is wrapped in leather. I think the steering wheel design is fantastic. And unlike a Mark 8 Golf GTI, which has the haptic touch sensitive pads here on the steering wheel, in this car we get conventional buttons, and I much prefer those. So we get cruise control, adaptive cruise control as standard in this car for the left spoke there, and you can adjust your fully configurable dash with the ones on the right hand side. You're also getting a lot of active safety systems as standard for your cash in this Life version. I mentioned before you get adaptive cruise control. You also score blind spot detection, rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking sensors, even lane keep assist, which keeps you centered in your lane as you're driving along the freeway. One option pack worth fitting to your Golf wagon is the Sound and Vision pack, which is $1,500, but that does add a head-up display and also a Harman Kardon premium audio. I think I would definitely tick that. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard as you would expect. They're wireless in this car. You also get 4 USB-C ports, 2 in the front here and a couple in the back. We also get a wireless charging pad for your phone ahead of the really cute little stubby gear shifter here, so that is a handy feature. And this Life version also gets upgraded comfort seats. I don't know if you can see from the view there, but we get a lot of lateral support here. The seats are very comfortable, and I think the design on this upholstery is also pretty groovy. We get 2 centrally mounted cup holders here. They fit takeaway cups of coffee very easily, and this front one actually expands to a big wide opening, or if you've got a smaller cup of coffee, this thing flips out to hold it nice and snugly, which is good. Another central bin in here, which is lined with a plastic liner so things don't rattle around when you're driving. And the door bins in particular are really wide. They swallow my oversized drink bottle easily. You could put a couple of these in there actually, as well as a couple of coffee cups. And they are lined with felt, so they're flocked, which is really handy as well. Speaking of handy features, one of the real benefits of going for the wagon is the increased space in the rear seat. So let's jump back there and check it out. In the back, first thing you notice is that extra room. So the increased wheelbase gives a little bit more knee room. I'm sat behind my seating position. I'm 6'3". I've got a good amount of knee room. The seat itself on this rear bench is very comfortable. We'll get a shot here that shows just how heavily sculpted these outboard seats are, and they are very comfortable. Natural backrest angle, loads of under thigh support as well, and I've also got a really good amount of headroom. Decent amount of toe room, not a huge amount, but a decent amount. And the vision out is absolutely fantastic thanks to these low door sills. 2 minor gripes: these windows don't go all the way down, which is a pet peeve of mine. And the materials quality back here has taken a bit of a step down compared with the front. So on the front, the door cards get a nice soft touch material, but in the back, hard plastic. It's also hard plastic around the rear air vents here, which is a bit of a bummer, but we do get our own individual temperature control, which is great, and you do get air vents, which isn't always the case in this class of car. It's very important if you have kids. ISOFIX fixtures on each of the outboard seats, and there's also top tethers for all 3, so you're going to fit a couple of kiddie seats back here, no trouble at all. Amenity-wise, plenty of places to put things. Both front seats get map pockets. They also get these other little groovy pockets just above here, which you can slot a phone into, which is quite helpful. Big door bins, again, they're flocked, which is handy. They swallow my oversized drink bottle very easily. And the central seat, which is a little bit raised compared with the outboard seats, means that if you are sitting on there, you do feel a little bit perched forward, but it's a fine space to put a small sized adult for a short journey if you've got 3 people back here. Central armrest means you've got a comfy spot to put your elbow, and 2 cup holders, which, oh, the front one at least is a bit larger, swallows my oversized drink bottle, but the one at the back does not. There we go. So the rear of this car is not an afterthought by any stretch. We've got a decent amount of room, on par with most small to medium sized SUVs, I would say. Let's go and see what this car's like to drive. Like the rest of the Golf range in Australia at the moment, you can only have the choice of one engine with the Golf wagon, and that is a 1.4 litre turbocharged petrol with 110 kilowatts and 250 Newton meters. But the big change for Mark 8 Golf is that there is no longer a DSG gearbox available in the regular Golf range. You can still get it on the Golf GTI, but for the regular range, it's now an 8-speed torque converter auto from Aisin. I think it is an improvement because you have none of that lag or jerkiness at low speed when you're trying to do 3-point turns or when you're trying to park in an underground city car park. And let's face it, that's where this car is going to be spending most of its time. The gearbox itself, very fast to respond. Throttle pickup is very positive and clean as well. None of that jerkiness while you're waiting to get going or trying to punch into an intersection. It's very responsive and it's very eager. You also get shift paddles, which respond quite well. And the engine itself, look, 110 kilowatts, 250 Newton meters, mightn't sound like that much on paper, but in the real world, it's a fizzy little unit, this one. It's eager to respond. The pickup from the engine and the response that you get and the performance on tap is actually very, very decent. Sounds okay too, I think. It's a little bit vocal at the top end, but it's a very refined, quite premium feeling engine, so no complaints there. If, however, 110 kilowatts doesn't sound quite enough for you and you really want to golf with a wagon body style, good news on that front, because there is a Golf R wagon coming our way very, very soon, and that thing should be an absolute hoot to drive. Golf R wagons have always been one of my favorite Golfs, and the new one, I think it has a 235 kilowatts, so it should be a little bit more feisty than this one. But in saying that, this car's no slouch when it comes to going around corners. It's not super engaging, but it's not trying to be either. It's a sort of small wagon that's going to be used mostly for family duties, and underneath it's riding on the MQB platform. And that means the bones underneath are very, very sound. So we've got consistently weighted steering, we've got a composed ride, body control is kept nicely in check. In terms of how it drives, it does feel like a slightly larger hatchback, and it's also helped by the fact that wagons in Australia, we get the multi-link rear suspension. Some versions of the Golf wagon in Europe do get a torsion beam at the back, but we get the more sophisticated multi-link. It just feels really well refined, and as though it has been refined and evolved over a number of generations. And there's a reason that the Golf is always one of our benchmark cars when it comes to ride and handling, and this wagon variant is no different. So there you go. New Golf wagon is a pretty convincing thing, and hopefully if you're still here at this point, I have convinced you that if you're shopping for a small to medium-sized SUV, maybe check out one of these as well. Before we go, there's also one other car that I suggest you check out, and that is the Skoda Octavia wagon. Shares a lot of the same underpinnings as this Golf wagon, but it's a teensy bit bigger, costs a little bit less. And if you're in the market for practical and affordable family transport, don't buy an SUV, go and test drive both of those, because they should definitely be on your shortlist.